let's go ahead and get this started here. So what we got? All right, here we go. Devotions for today come to us from the book of Psalms, chapter 22. We hear the following. The 22nd Psalm is a prophecy of the suffering and resurrection of Christ, and a prophecy of the gospel, which the entire world shall hear and receive. For beyond all other texts, it clearly shows Christ's torment on the cross, that he was pierced hand and foot, and his limbs were stretched out so that his bones could have been counted. Nowhere in the other prophets can one find so clear of a description, for it is indeed one of the chief psalms. Hear the words of Psalm chapter 22. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me from the words of my groaning? Oh my God, I cry by day, and you do not answer, and by night, and I find no rest. Yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. In you our fathers trusted, they trusted, and you delivered them. To you they cried and were rescued. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by mankind and despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They make mouths at me and they wag their heads. He trusts in the Lord. Let him deliver them. Let him rescue him, for he delights in him. Yet you are he who took me from the womb. You made me trust you at my mother's breast. On you I was cast from my birth, and from my mother's womb you have been my God. Be not far from me, for trouble is near, and there is none to help me. Many bulls encompass me, strong bulls of Bashan surround me. They open wide their mouths at me like a raving and roaring lion. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax, it is melted within my breast. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to my jaw. You lay me in the dust of death. For dogs encompass me, and a company of evildoers encircles me. They have pierced my hands and feet. I can count all my bones. They stare and gloat over me. They divide my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. But you, O Lord, be not far off. For you, my help, come quickly to my aid. Deliver my soul from the sword, my precious life from the power of the dogs. Save me from the mouth of the lion, for you rescued me from the horns of the wild oxen. I will tell of your name to my brothers, and in the midst of the congregation I will praise you. You who fear the Lord, praise him, and all you offspring of Jacob, glorify him, and stand in awe of him, all you offspring of Israel. For he has not despised or abhorred the afflictions of the afflicted. He has not hidden away his face from him, but he has heard when he cried to him. From you come my praise in the great congregation. My vow I will perform for those who fear him. The afflicted shall eat and be satisfied, and those who seek him shall praise the Lord. May your heart live forever. All the ends of the earth shall remember and turn to the Lord, and all families of the nations before you shall worship you. For kingship belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nation. All the prosperous of the earth eat and worship before him shall bow down and go down into the dust, even the one who could not keep himself alive. Posterity shall serve him, and they shall be told of the Lord to the coming generations, and they shall come and proclaim his righteousness to a peoples yet unborn, that he has done it. Let's pray. Blessed Lord, who caused the Holy Scriptures to be written for our learning, grant us so to hear them, read, mark, learn, and inwardly digest them, that we might embrace and ever hold fast to the blessed hope of everlasting life, which you have given us through our Savior, Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. All right, so let's see, where are we at with things? Did I give you,
You just gave us a brand new pack.
yeah, Life in the New Testament, Life and Culture. I have so many extras. All right, that's fine. So let's take a look. What do we got? All right.
Are we gonna need our Bibles?
I don't think so. Should be okay today. No, not right now. It's just
Oh my God.
just us.
Laura, Rachel, Kate, Jenna,
Yes.
Laura.
That's okay. Do you have a reminder for the notes? Oh, okay. Yeah, go grab it. All right. All right, here we go. New Testament, life and culture. Right, that's where we're starting off with this day. We started this yesterday?
No.
All right, perfect. All right, so there's three basic tenets that we need to make sure that we understand. Okay, life in the New Testament. This is not looking up yet. There it is. Life in the New Testament was meticulous, meaning it was precise, it was on point, it was carefully thought out, right? It was meticulous, it was, everything was done accurately. It was dangerous, and not only did you have to fear the wild animals, but also, bandits and people who wish to do you harm. In addition to that, right, without modern medical practice, even something as simple as minor injuries could often prove fatal, right? We don't have the things such as a tetanus shot, so you poke yourself on a rusty nail, probably going to die, right? That kind of is the resounding, slightly more of a joke that we're going to be experiencing as we move throughout this text.
Okay, so how did they know where they were going? Like, from place to place? There was, was there a way knowing where you were going? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. You can use the sun, the moon, the stars for navigation.
That seems so hard. Like, just knowing.
Absolutely. It
But
was
they grew up knowing
extremely
that.
difficult. Yeah. It's far easier to have a global positioning system that triangulates your real-time position based off of 3 or more satellites, right?
Right on a phone.
Right on your phone, absolutely. Yeah. But all right, so it was dangerous, right? And finally, there are no modern conveniences, right? So no maps, no GPS. Maps would have been kind of limited and crude. There was no standard unit of distance. So it would have been, somewhere over in this direction is the city you're looking for, right? Travel being done by the sun, the moon, the stars instead of plugging in street addresses on Google. All right. So let's take a look at these. First off, occupations. Right? There's going to be a lot of stuff you're going to have to write into kind of that little short box. I probably should reformat these a little bit, but we'll be able to make it there. So shepherding, right? First are the primitive occupations we're going to look at. And by primitive, I mean occupations don't really have a lot of refined training that needs to happen. A couple things you need to know about shepherding. First off, again, remember these are your notes, so you're going to want to write down whatever you need in order to be familiar with this material. You don't have to write down my words word for word. Actually, writing down my stuff word for word probably is not going to be a great help for you. Because these are my notes, right? I'm giving them to you.
You can just write the little bullet points, not the definition.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what you need in order to know what's going on, by all means, go for it. Okay, so yeah, shepherding was hard work. It wasn't a prestigious job, right? That means that people didn't normally grow up and say, "Hey, I want to be a shepherd." It was normally done by those of the lower class. It was an occupation that one did in order to survive. And again, think about the most famous example of a shepherd, right? David, who eventually becomes the king. But you recall when David is first selected, he's just a humble little shepherd boy, right? He's the youngest son, so he gets stuck with all of the crap jobs, right? If any of you are the youngest child, you know what I'm talking about. Being an oldest child, I made sure that my younger siblings always got stuck with the jobs that weren't quite as fun. That's the benefit of being the older sibling, right? No, but in all seriousness, though, right? The shepherds, right, were generally looked down on by most of the populace. It was a dangerous job, however. Again, as a shepherd, you not only had to watch out for bandits or people who would try to steal your sheep, but wild animals ran freely across the countryside. And especially at night, it became difficult to see attacks before they came. What a shepherd would do in order to protect his flock, he would actually hide them in caves or Eventually, later on, they ended up setting up little pens and stuff throughout the countryside. But all of these places would have a single entrance and exit in which the shepherd would stand guard. He would actually sleep in the doorway to protect his sheep against anyone who would do them harm. Because the thing is that if the sheep were harmed, if the sheep were slaughtered, the shepherd lost his entire livelihood. So now he's sunk from being a low-class person to being a beggar, which was the lowest form of low. You had very, very few rights as a beggar because you had no property, you had no income, you had nothing to really to offer society. Yeah, it would suck big time. And so the shepherd would give his life for his sheep, right? Because if he didn't, at least in the first century, right, he would become dishonored, right? And people would look down on him even more.
So they would die over a sheep.
They would die over their flock of sheep, absolutely.
But like if one died, would he just kill himself?
He wouldn't kill himself,
How
but he would fight. He would fight tooth and nail for his sheep because his sheep are how he survives.
That's so but if a sheep was walking over the edge, I would jump for safety.
Yeah. Again, standard diet for the shepherd, right, was some meat, mostly from birds, right? Milk, probably from goats or sheep, right? And wild fruits and nuts, which grow all over the place. It's easy enough to forage those things. Again, sheep and goats were okay to raise, but pigs were not. Remember, pigs are unclean. Normally, I also get a question, what about cattle and oxen? Cows and oxen. They were mostly raised for farming, actually. We didn't have massive herds of free-range cattle running around, and ground beef really wasn't a thing at this point in history. Because of the great strength that we see with oxen and cows, they were mostly used to just pull plows through a field. Nope, steak was not.
They were missing out.
Yeah, they were absolutely missing out. Yeah. Mostly it was done solo, and in a few instances, for example, we'll take a look at Luke 2 at some point. We see a couple of groups of shepherds coming together, kind of pooling their resources, as it were. Yeah, for the most part, it was kind of a solo operation. Sheepdogs don't become a thing in history until kind of later on, when dogs become more frequently domesticated. But yeah, it was mostly just a solo operation done by a single person out on their own. Which is why, we got to talk about tools. One of the shepherd's tools is actually a musical instrument because, I'll get to that in a second. All right, so if you haven't heard this passage from Psalm 23, you're going to hear it tomorrow, right? Because that's our devotion, the text for our devotion. But keep this in mind, right? So you have the staff, the shepherd's staff, which you're familiar with the hooked end. And then you have the rod. A couple things I want to point out to on the rod, though. Make sure that you kind of take note of the string kind of off the end there. So as we talk about this, right, the shepherd had really 4 primary instruments that all shepherds really took with them. First off, they had the rod, right? And the rod is a club that's about 2 foot long that had a string on the end. Why a string on the end? Why do I keep bringing that up? Well, what they would do is they would, instead of just using it as what we would think of as a club, right? They would actually grab onto the string and use the string to increase the amount of force that they could swing the club.
Like a whip?
More like if you're
Like a
familiar.
lasso? Like
No, not a lasso, but if you're familiar with like a medieval ball and chain, right?
yeah, that's what I was going for when I meant whip.
Yeah, that's really what it was. Yeah,
That's-
it was.
That abusive.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you're facing a lion, a tiger, or a bear.
Oh, it's the
I
against a sheep.
No,
Yeah, that's
no,
why I
no,
thought that's
sheep.
why I was
No, no,
like,
No, this is their self-defense weapon.
Oh, okay,
The-
then yeah.
The implement used to discipline the sheep would have been the staff, right? It was a 6 to 7 foot rod that would have been useful for knocking off fruit from trees, right, as it's higher up on the tree, but also for leading and rescuing the sheep. Um, giving a little love tap here and there, right, as they need it.
Wait, why would they use the small stick to beat up the big animal instead of the staff?
Because
that's
the
6 feet?
because the staff, and some would use the staff as a self-defense tool too, but the staff is of a smaller thickness than the rod. The rod is a big chunk of wood. I mean, it's a 2 foot long, but it's not it's not the size of a meter stick. Like it's got some weight to it.
Yeah, but I just feel like you have to get pretty close to the one.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, more often than not, you're not going to be able to see a wolf coming at you until it's almost too late.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I could only, like, you know how, like, when you have, like, I don't know, it's just something, like, when you fling in the air, like, even if it's a small stick, like, you can, like, hear that noise, like, and
Mhm.
that scares me, like, just imagine just,
Yeah, absolutely.
what is it? I don't know why it's imagine just hearing that when you're walking.
All right. In addition, right, they also carried with them a sling and a bag of stones, right? They would spend a lot of time perfecting the art of using that. Yeah, a little less advanced than our modern day slingshot, but the same kind of idea. And finally, right, they would have a harp or some kind of musical instrument in order to help pass the time. Again, like I said, they were probably out there alone. But it also becomes extremely useful for leading the sheep because, as we're going to read in the Gospels, Christ uses the analogy of mankind being like sheep over and over and over again. Because, like the sophomore class, they get easily distracted by things that are going on around them.
I
And
feel targeted.
I heard that statement.
But the harp, right? The harp or flutes or some kind of a musical instrument to that effect ended up distracting the sheep, right? So they focused on the loud noise, as it were, as the case may be. All right, let's shift gears then. Another primitive occupation, hunting, right? Hunting was not easy. Hunting was not easy. All right, the tools the hunters would use would have been a primitive bow and arrow or a javelin. One of the things that we see most common here is that a lot of the arrows that we see going in the first century Israelite era are missing what we call fletching, which are the arrows that one puts at the back of, or the feathers one puts at the back of the arrow in order to help it fly straight and true. Without that, right, the arrows kind of have a tendency to go all over the place, which is really kind of what we're looking at here when we talk about hunting. The javelin was also quite frequently used, right? Technically, it's a little bit longer than a spear, right? But that's the same idea. Yeah.
Pointing.
It's a pointy stick. Yep.
Isn't it like long or am I thinking something else?
The javelin is usually longer than a spear, but they're in the same classification of weapon, just the difference of length. Yep, just the difference of the stick. Let's see. One other thing to mention about hunting, right? 1 out of every 7 years there was no hunting allowed, and this was not like a chain thing, right? It's not like one family could hunt 1 year, the next family couldn't hunt the next year. No, it was across the land of Israel. There was no hunting for 1 year for everybody, which is why hunters normally would have some kind of secondary occupation that they would do, as the case may be. Yeah.
So like right before that 1 year starts, do they just kill a bunch of animals? Like, so they have a bunch of meat for the thing, or do they just not eat meat for a whole year?
Well, we'll talk about some preservation tactics a little bit later on, but it wasn't so much that, I mean, they would have still had like lamb chops and gyros and the like, because animal sacrifices of sheep were still a common thing, right? But in terms of hunting, birds, deer, and the like there. One out of every 7 where no hunting was allowed. If you got hurt hunting, you died.
Did they stone you?
Yeah. No, they didn't stone you. Like if you got hurt hunting, you probably did something really bad to your body, like you broke something or you. Yeah, I mean, if you got caught between animals, or if you got injured. I mean, the thing is that modern medical practices is not a thing. I
Wait,
mean,
no.
you're in people's line of fire.
Like, what if somebody saw you hunting?
Okay, sorry, missed the question. Thank you for the clarification. Yeah, if you were caught hunting during the 7-year period, I don't know. I'd have to look that up. This class is starting to become rather good about asking like what would happen if people broke the rule kind of questions. And
You'd be the ones breaking.
apparently, yeah, because you guys would be the ones that break them. No, but the other thing is too, right? And this kind of ties in with this idea of being meticulous, is that people when a rule was given out, people followed the rule. Why? Because it was a rule they needed to follow, and they didn't really ask a lot of questions about it necessarily. But yeah, no, I can definitely look up the hunting regulation one, because now you've got me a little bit curious about that. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that this is actually one of the things that's mentioned by God, that 1 out of every 7 there was no hunting allowed. And I would actually wager to guess that they probably were killed or removed from the tribe of Israel. But
I feel like it would be like the Bible is so like like the eye for an eye thing. I feel like however way they killed the animals, how they would be killed. Because there's a pattern.
yeah, well, I'll take a look and see what I can find out if I get a chance here today, and we'll go from there. So yeah, cool.
Can I ask a question that's related to religion, but not necessarily this?
Let me get through fishing, and then we'll see kind of where our timeline.
I want to say,
Yeah. Fishing. So this will take us a little bit to knock out real quick, because this is really important. Yeah. So fishing. Fishing was all about not only catching the fish, but you also had to clean them before you could sell them. Right? Because people are lazy and they don't want to do that dirty work themselves. As the case may be. So how did fishing work? Well, when we take a look at fishing, we're mostly talking about fishing towards the region of the Sea of Galilee, right? That's going to be our kind of fishing hotspot. And what we see going on there is a lot of net fishing. You would have people in a boat, probably a couple of people, so that you could haul in large catches of fish. How does net fishing work? Hold on that question. I'm going to explain it on the next slide. All right. But the challenge that we see with fishing is that it is immensely dangerous. One of the things that first century Galilean fishing boats are missing, right, is a oh man, I just forgot the term. They're missing a stabilization piece that goes through the keel. Wow, I hate it when that happens. You ever get to a point where you're just like having a conversation and you can't remember what you're going to say?
All of the time.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to refresh my memory and probably make a note so that doesn't happen again. That's
okay.
unfortunate. At any rate, right, fishing on the Sea of Galilee was dangerous, though, not only because your boats are primitive, but also because storms can blow up rather quickly. Remember, we talked about some of the terrain type of stuff a couple of lessons ago here. right? The Sea of Galilee literally sits in a bowl surrounded by mountains on every side.
Oh, that's a bad idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's funny.
And so
Just get blown into the mountains.
and so storms would blow up rather quickly and make their way across the sea. And so it is that we see most people only sailing a few hundred yards out in order for them to be able to come back in rather quickly if a storm would blow up there.
Oh, so they didn't really have to know how to navigate them. They're not going that far.
Yeah, they're not going that far. Most people, even if you talk about like sailing on the Mediterranean Sea, stay close to shoreline because when you get out past that, if things go wrong, the problems are worse. Right?
I have two things. The first thing, they didn't get to keep any of their fish that they caught for themselves.
No, that's not true. But you wouldn't keep that many of them because that would cut in your profits.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, it became kind of a balancing game, but yeah, they would definitely keep and eat some of the fish that they caught.
And then the second thing, what fish would probably be in there?
It's a good question. It's a lot of smaller fish. I don't know. Maybe on the next slide might have something on it. But the schools of fish that we're talking about are normally smaller in origin. So we're talking, a pound, couple pounds maybe. Not even. So
Oh,
it's
wait,
not-
what's that another thing?
So-
What would they use for like bait, or would they just put the net in there?
yeah, just the net.
Because they would just put it in there.
Yep. Well, you'll see in the next slide how net fishing works. Okay, so yeah, they're on a certain vocation, right? So if you didn't catch any fish, that's rough. You're not gonna eat. Yep,
I would not like that.
yep. No fish means no food. That's unfortunate. Again, this whole occupation though is about being patient, enduring failure, learning about danger, right? Yeah. Again, this makes the disciples though the perfect group of people to become disciples, right? Because they understand how it works to have patient endurance. That's the case. All right. So let's take a look at net fishing, right? I was just going to see real quick if there were any more descriptions about fish. Looks like there is none. Okay, so here we go. So a Galilean fishing boat. If you've seen like the standard like UPS truck ever, big old brown van. That's about how long the boats were, right? You would get.
But they're different sizes.
Well, think about the one that's the most normal one, not the really short one, but
What's either small or long?
the long one.
No,
Yeah, okay. Like we're not talking like the postal delivery truck. We're talking like
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's like small ones and then there's like long. Okay, now there's no meat.
okay.
How about UPS? There's a big round and a small white one.
okay.
No, small white ones
Here,
are the US
I can-
Postal Service.
I mean, I can give you another illustration. It's 5 of these tables together, right? And that's about 25 feet.
Or like a small U-Haul.
Yeah, like the actual U-Hauls that you drive. Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
There are U-Hauls that you don't drive?
Yeah, the trailers.
Oh, okay.
Anyway,
So
yeah.
like, how do we know like what is just normal? Because like normal in our brains, like we have like a version of normal.
Wow. So we've shifted from theology to existential questions, right? How do you know what normal is? Well, yeah, that really does become the thing, right? I mean, like I showed you yesterday, right? The idea of Israel being the size of Wisconsin is simply not the case, right? We're talking about a really small landform. The Sea of Galilee here is 6 miles across. That's
6 city blocks.
yeah. We did that yesterday, right? It's we're talking about small stuff here. but that becomes the thing, right? So normal becomes whatever you can most closely associate with.
So like Michigan would be like normal, and then this would be small, but what if that was like normal, and then like, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Absolutely. If you were a first century Galilean fisherman, right? The Sea of Galilee is massive until you go to the Mediterranean Sea, right? So our idea of what normal is not necessarily the idea of what is actual.
I'm putting that on my list of what I'm actually got. I want to
Excellent.
know what normal actually is.
What is normal? Good stuff.
Normal's an opinion.
Let's see. Okay, so yeah, so you've got this this first century kind of Galilean fishing boat going on in there, right? They had sails, although they didn't really use them for a lot. Rowing was a lot more reliable. They had some favorable wind conditions. Obviously, they would throw those out there. And you can also see there, right, how net fishing works. So the schools of fish are just kind of swimming around right down below. And what happens is you have a net that has weights around the outside. You throw that into the water. The weights all hit the water. And because the weights sink faster than the net, right, as it goes down, it captures the fish in the school. Yeah.
Okay, I can't really read it, but what is that shadow figure just in the water?
Yeah, that's what I was literally gonna ask.
This guy back here?
Yeah.
Why is he in the
I
water?
can't read it.
He's swimming. Why is he swimming? Well, because he's trying to find these guys over here.
Yeah, but if you went over them, wouldn't they just swim away?
Not if he swam on the opposite side, right? So he could. Yeah. So yeah, again, remember the Sea of Galilee is a freshwater lake, so he should be able to, like, open his eyes and look around it without much difficulty. And kind of give a report as to what's going on.
Okay. I have too much fun in class. I don't know.
That's awesome. Love it. All right. Anything else? All right. Yeah. I can't remember what it is, and at some point someone's gonna make fun of me for it. But first century Galilean fishing boats, though, are missing there should be a piece of wood that goes underneath the boat here that helps keep it stable so that it doesn't rock back and forth so much. I don't know if it was so much they weren't smart enough, but
That came off.
it becomes a challenge with depending on how you kind of put your boat
So I
together.
mean, they could just tip over it and.
Yeah, it was vastly.
Have you not
unstable.
tipped a canoe before?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Never.
That's what I was gonna say. Like,
I've flipped every
if
thing
you
but a boat.
if
Like,
you-
anything I can go in water, I flip it.
Yes.
It's really easy.
If you-
if you try.
if you think though about how, if you've ever been a canoe, how unstable. If you think though about how unstable a canoe is, right? It requires a lot of balance and finesse in order to keep upright. While a first century Galilean fishing boat is wider than a canoe, you still kind of face those same things. So if you put too much force behind it, you could actually roll the boat. Just unfortunate, but it is what it is. All right. Sweet, let's keep rolling then. Actually, maybe not. I think, yeah. All right, we're gonna hold here. We'll stop at first.
Can I
century
ask a
Galilean fishing
question?
boat.
Mike?
So we'll stop that recording and we'll go from there.